Are Mormon women being silenced? That was my worry when I made this video for International Women's Day, reflecting on the fact that the session of Mormon General Conference that used to feature the most women has now been cancelled. In fact, this video is coming out at the time that that session normally would have been going on. My worry was, and still is, that it seems that Mormon women are being silenced, with their opportunities to speak being reduced. But I wanted to know whether women themselves are worried about this. What do they think about the level of women's representation, in General Conference and within the church more broadly? If you saw my video on why Mormon heaven is hell for women, then you know I'm not afraid to hand over the reins of a video to the people who can speak to an issue far better than I can. And so once again, I've assembled the women of progressive and post-Mormonism to share their insights. Let's roll the tape.
Hello, Nemo heads. Nemo asked me to share a few thoughts on the topic why women's voices matter in Mormonism, so here's just where my mind tends to go when I think about that. First of all, I know a lot of people, ex-Mormons especially, talk about the disparity in how much men will talk in church or in general conference versus how much women will talk. And some ex-Mormons like John DeLynn, for example, will really celebrate, when there's like an increase in the amount of time that we hear women speak in general conference. And I always have complex feelings about that because I don't necessarily think that in a patriarchal system like Mormonism, hearing more from women who are exclusively propping up that patriarchal system is necessarily an indication of reduced sexism. Like, I think if simply seeing a woman on your screen more, hearing more from a woman during general conference makes you less sexist, which is possible, sort of humanizes women more for you, or increases the way that you perceive like how important women are. That's a pretty low bar, I have sort of the same feelings about it as I do the Mormon church having Black apostles, or having more racially diverse leaders. It's like, on some level, yes, that's good, because you want the average member to respect diverse voices more, but there's never actually any diversity of thought in those settings. Like, women or people of color, for example, like they're still just being used to prop up the white supremacist patriarchal system. So it's hard for me to like really see it as a win when women get to do the opening prayer when they wouldn't normally, or something like that. Like, it all just feels a bit, breadcrumby, to say the least. What would be nice is if we could have more women being allowed, even saying that is like highlighting the problem, but more women speaking, for example, in general conference in Mormonism or in church. It's a bit more equal in church, isn't it? More women in leadership positions, more women speaking, but in a way where they're actually allowed to like center the female experience in a way that isn't just, propping up these patriarchal ideas of what women should be. Because the thing with Mormonism, groups like Mormonism, is they think that they want, or they claim to want, women to be, in their feminine power, in their feminine energy. I know that's not quite the language of Mormonism, but they want women to be women, or so they claim. But what that actually means is they want women to perform these patriarchal notions of femininity that these men have that aren't actually in line with an authentic female experience, which is inherently going to be much more diverse than this like one very narrow idea of womanhood, of femininity, whatever you want to call it, that they have in Mormonism. Why is my camera defocusing? Maybe this is a metaphor right here. It's like, yeah, here I am, a woman speaking, and yet, am I in focus? No.
Did you know that in the last session of General Conference, only 3 women spoke? In J. Annette Dennis's talk, she quoted men 7 times.
The author writes, President Russell M. Nelson has said, as President Nelson said, the Savior said, and President Nelson added, and as our Savior has said, he has also told us.
In Andrea Munoz Spanos' talk, she also quoted men 7 times.
One day, the prophet Elisha was passing through Shunem, and we read, Elder Gary E. Stevenson said, Abinadi proclaimed, Samuel the Lamanite also testified, and the prophet Moroni said, when Christ visited the Nephites, and he said to the people, and then he said to them, once the prophet Joseph Smith said.
And in Tracy Y. Browning's talk, she quoted men 5 times.
President Dallin H. Oaks once taught, President Russell M. Nelson taught. President Nelson also taught, as Elder Henry B. Eyring has reminded us, Matthew records.
And in all of these talks by women, only one woman was quoted, one time.
When primary began in 1878, its first president, Aurelia Spencer Rogers, observed,
Doing this research, I'm reminded of a Mormon Stories interview done by Celeste Davis. She used to write articles for the church, and she was very good at it. In that interview, she disclosed two things. The first is that in one of her articles, she tried to quote Brene Brown, and the church told her no. They told her that all of her quotes must link back to the church's own website. The second thing is that once she submitted an article, and they sent it back, telling her that she did not quote general authorities enough, and that she should fix it. When it comes to General Conference, some have said that we should not have more women speakers. That if we had more women speakers, they would simply quote the men and uphold the patriarchy. While I don't doubt that this is true, I still think that we should have more women speakers. I, for one, want my daughter to see more women on the stand. I want her to hear the women quoting the voices of other women. I want her to see herself reflected in the church. Will this solve the problem? Certainly not. But it's a step, and maybe a necessary step in the direction of women achieving equality in the Mormon Church.
I would love to hear more women speak in General Conference, and aside from obvious things like the divine feminine, something I would really love to hear about is how women use the priesthood in their lives themselves. The teachings around women in the priesthood have changed so much over the last 10 years, and they're now teaching that women have access to the priesthood through their covenants. So I'd love to hear really specific examples of how women are doing that and how women are experiencing that completely irrespective of a male influence. Another thing I would love to hear is, since they just opened up Sunday school presidencies to women, I would love to hear more women talk about how to be good leaders, how to hone their leadership skills, and what skills, will come naturally to them, given their divine nature. And probably the last thing that I would really love to hear from women is their own experiences. A lot of times we hear women just quoting other prophets and quoting other men, but I would love to hear their personal experiences with the doctrine of Christ and the scriptures and all of those things.
If the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wants to run its affairs in consistency with its beliefs, it really should look at the way General Conference is formatted. If we're going to say, the Church is going to say that men and women are equal, they shouldn't be running meetings that blatantly misrepresent that doctrine, and in a way that really hurts a lot of the members. The conversation around the lack of female voices at General Conference is something that needs to be ongoing and pervasive, because visuals matter immensely. And what I think can very likely happen in the case where spiritual guidance, inspiration, direction is coming almost exclusively from people in suits and ties, is that somehow the members subconsciously get the idea that men are the more formidable, spiritually formidable of the sexes, which is not true, which is a harmful concept to kind of move around the world with. And when I myself have had to confront my own internal logic and reasoning, that is something I have had to deal with. It really negatively impacts who we think we are and the dynamics between genders in the church, at the home, and going forward. And so this is vital. It is vital that we confront the idea that men should be the ones that we hear from most.
So the first thing that came to my mind was whether more women should be speaking, or actually maybe first we need more men to be listening. When women are seen to have less authority, their words are held with less weight. And women speakers at General Conference tend to be there to talk to the children in their role as maybe primary president, or to the young women in their role as young women's president, or maybe to talk to the Relief Society in that capacity as a Relief Society general president, which is all well and good, but the men are never expected to give any weight to the words that are being spoken. The words are never addressed to the men. They are discounted. And the reason I would say this is I've never seen a man scribbling earnestly down in his journal the words of the General Relief Society president and thinking about how he can apply them to his life. But I have seen women doing that about male speakers at General Conference. And until women and their views and their thoughts and their ability to speak to their real lived experiences are validated in that way, I don't think it matters if every single person speaking at General Conference was a woman. the men will not listen to them. So if we truly value female voices, and if we respect their views as equal to the men and their male contemporaries, then we'll see that in the behaviour of all of the members. And then I was thinking about this change that's happened around Ward Sunday School presidents now being, it's okay for it to be a woman, and that being purported as a positive move forward. Sunday school used to be part of the 3-hour block. It was a 1 hour of the 3 hours. Now it's an every other week. It's a calling that everyone would say is a real low effort calling. As the Ward Sunday School presidency, maybe you have to ring the bell to say that the class has got 5 more minutes, and that's I'm being facetious. I know there's other things that need to be done, but it's not that big a calling, and it's now every other week. So to now give that responsibility to women feels like it's evidence of the lack of importance of that calling rather than an elevation of women standing in the church. And again, this is at ward level with only female councillors to serve under a female, and at state level it needs to be a man. The changes I would like to see, the things I would like to hear being said, is that women are going to be included in disciplinary councils, that women are going to be included when they're talking about how to best use budgets, that there's an equalisation of how funding is spent between the sexes. What I'd like to see is that women are speaking to men not about women's issues, but about issues that affect all members of the church, and that their views and their experiences and their inspiration is validated in exactly the same way as their male contemporaries would be. But what I would like you to do now is end this meeting with a male voice, please, and possibly, validate my views with your male voice. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. I'm incredibly grateful to all these women for sharing their insights, and if you want more of this content, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And please consider joining my $6 a month Patreon for extra videos, behind the scenes content, all that good stuff. Or simply sending $5 a month through DonorBox just so I can keep making content like this at all. This work is only possible through your support, and so thank you to everyone who does support me. If you want to see my work continue, the links are all in the description, and I'll see you next time. Or I could see you in this video right here. A pretty good one.